Welcome to Gut Health Made Simple. I'm your host, Kim. Today, we're going to talk about what I would do if I were in an autoimmune flare-up. And to give you a little bit of background, I want to start out by saying I am not a doctor and I don't pretend to be a doctor. Instead, I'm a person who has had rheumatoid arthritis for 35 years. I was diagnosed at 17 years old, and it took me 35 years to finally say there has to be something else besides all this medication that I'm taking in order to manage my autoimmune disease. So I started to do a little bit of research on my own. Lo and behold, I found some ways to sort of manage my autoimmune disease naturally, and eventually I was able to wean off of my medication. I do not suggest or recommend that that's something that you should do, but I do want to share the strategies that I used to help me get out of those constant flare-ups that weren't being managed correctly. And another reason why I want to share this information with you right now is because I did have my first big flare-up since I've been off my medication just a couple weeks ago. So I want to share with you some of the things that I had to do in this last week to get myself back on track. Diet is probably the largest one. Working with my diet and making some of the changes is probably the one that takes the most time, takes the most effort, but really has the most payoff. So in this past week, when I wanted to fight back against my flare-up, what I did was I got back to basics and I removed things like sugar, gluten, and dairy from my diet. Now, with one caveat, I will always eat Siggi's non-fat yogurt with bananas and a little bit of dark chocolate chips every evening. So that's like the extent of my dairy that I've been eating throughout the week. So I got back to those basics because that's what's going to help the gut sort of begin to repair itself. Additionally, I'm a person who's sensitive to lectins. Now, I do have a video that kind of explains lectins, and I'll connect it to this video if you want to check that out. So lectins are these plant-based proteins that grow on the plant foods that we eat, and they're meant to protect themselves from predators. So I have a bit of a sensitivity to lectins, and I know that when I removed them the first time that I was trying to manage my rheumatoid, it really worked. So I pulled back on lectins this past week, and so I cut out tomatoes, cucumbers, nightshades, and beans. Now, if I wanted to eat those things, there are ways to kind of do that. I could have de-seeded my cucumbers. I could have pressure cooked my beans and my tomatoes, but I just kind of removed them for 1 week. And I really saw a difference. And then finally, I made sure that I was going back to really choosing whole foods again, or at least as close to the natural state of the foods that I was eating. So for example, instead of a chicken finger, I had grilled chicken. Instead of a French fry, I would have a potato. So things like that, really choosing the least amount of ingredients in my food and the wholest way of eating my food. So that's what I did with food in this past week, in combination with adding daily movement. So when I was on vacation, I got away from my regular exercise and really started putting my body under stress with just like nonstop activity that didn't really focus on my strength. So I had found a strength training program about 18 months ago. It's a 90-day program, and I just keep that on repeat. Put myself back on it last week when I started to fight against this flare-up. It's very hard to add movement to your day when you're in pain. However, once those endorphins start going, you start to feel the relief. And once you start to feel the relief, it creates momentum. So I will attach how I found that program and how you can get to it if you are interested in it. I'll also attach that to the notes in the description below. The next thing that I had to make sure that I was doing was getting back to managing my stress. Now, I can do this in a couple of different ways. I like to get in touch with nature as much as possible. So just going outside, listening to the wind in the trees, listening to the birds sing, getting a little bit of vitamin D from the sun. Also, deep breathing. So we were made with like these lungs that we don't use anymore to their fullest extent. So deep breathing each day is going to help kind of calm our nervous system. It's going to help our lymphatic system, and it's going to help us to reduce a little bit of stress. So taking really full deep breaths at least 5 minutes a day is going to really help with that stress management. In addition, practicing gratitude each day. So did you know that when you take the time to think about the things that you're thankful each day, it creates neural pathways that bring you back to the positive part of your brain. And so by doing this, by practicing gratitude each day, by giving thanks each day for the things that are good in your life, that's actually helping you to create a habit of positivity. And that's going to help you reduce stress. And then finally, prioritizing sleep. Now, this is the most challenging one for me, and I don't even have little kids in the house anymore. I think I've conditioned myself to believe that I should be awake as much as possible. And a couple of things that I've done to help prioritize sleep is number one, I wake up when the sun comes up. And I know that might sound crazy, especially in the thick of the summer when the sun's coming up pretty close to 5 a.m., but that's my time when I enjoy my coffee, I walk my dogs, I have a little bit of alone time, and I can get my day started without being in a rush. And then I really, really have to tell myself to do this every single day, and that's start to cut out the screen time as I approach bedtime. So our bodies, again, were meant to wake up when the sun comes up and go to sleep when the sun goes down. Now, surely I'm not going to go to sleep when the sun goes down at 6 p.m. or 4 p.m. in the winter, but cutting out that screen time, cutting out that artificial blue light as I approach bedtime is really important. And so I've been doing that in this past week, and it's been working actual wonders. And I'm finding myself sleeping mostly through the night until the sun comes up in the morning. Diet, exercise, stress management, and prioritizing sleep. Those are the 4 pillars that I use to get myself out of my flare-up, and it's what I've been doing to manage this autoimmune disease for the past 18 months. So if you find this information helpful, please click subscribe. I'm going to attach a quick guide below, so if you find yourself in a flare-up again, you can just pull out your quick guide and refer to it later on. And I hope to see you again soon, and you have a great day.